Commander Minho watched from the hidden control room deep inside Defense Platform 7 as the alien fleet stumbled into humanity's web-like insects into a spider trap. The platform looked like a normal asteroid from the outside, but inside it was filled with weapons that could crack planets in half. Around him, dozens of similar stations were powering up their energy cores, humming with barely controlled power. The aliens had made their first big mistake by thinking humans fought like everyone else. Every species in the galaxy did the same thing. Build ships, fight in empty space, surrender when they were outgunned. But humans were different. Humans thought like animals that had learned to hunt after being hunted. They prepared for wars that might never happen and planned to fight enemies they had never met. Engineer So Young ran through her final checks on the gravity mines scattered throughout the solar system. These invisible weapons floated in space like deadly seeds waiting to grow. Each one could create a tiny black hole when activated. The alien ships had flown right through the minefield without knowing it existed. Their vessels were already trapped, held in place by artificial gravity. They could not see or detect the gravity mines were a human invention, born from studying how black holes worked. If you could make gravity strong enough in one small spot, you could trap anything. Even ships that moved faster than light could not escape once the mines activated. So Young smiled as she watched the alien fleet slow down, without understanding why their engines were fighting against invisible chains. On Mars, the red planet had been completely changed into something the aliens never expected. Colonel Tae-jin prepared the surface cannons that covered every inch of the planet. Mars looked normal from space with its red dust and ancient craters, but underneath that familiar surface was the biggest gun in the solar system. The entire planet had been hollowed out and turned into one massive weapon. The Martian cannons could punch holes through any shield the aliens had ever built. Their projectiles moved at almost the speed of light, carrying enough energy to destroy a moon. Mars had been humanity's first colony, and now it was their greatest fortress. Every human settlement in the solar system had been changed the same way. Homes that looked peaceful on the outside were actually military bases waiting for war. But the real surprise was hidden in the asteroid belt. Lieutenant Ye-jin piloted one of humanity's true warships through the floating rocks completely invisible to alien sensors. These ships did not look like spacecraft at all. They appeared to be natural asteroids covered in ice and rock. But inside each fake rock was enough firepower to fight an entire alien battle group. The asteroid ships were humanity's greatest trick. While aliens built vessels that looked impressive and moved fast, humans built ships that looked like space junk, but fought like demons. Their hulls were designed to fool every type of sensor. Their weapons were hidden behind layers of fake rock, and their engines produced no heat signature when running silent. Lieutenant Ye-jin had been waiting in the asteroid belt for 3 months, living in a ship that looked like a chunk of space debris. Her crew had practiced this moment thousands of times. They knew every alien ship type, every weapon system, every tactical weakness. The aliens were about to fight an enemy that had studied them for decades, while they knew nothing about human capabilities. The 10th Armada formation began to fall apart as their commanders realized something was terribly wrong. Their sensors showed impossible readings everywhere. They looked. What they had thought was empty space was actually filled with more military hardware than existed in the rest of the galaxy. Combined, every piece of space junk, every floating rock, every patch of darkness could be hiding human weapons. Admiral Wu Jin tried to order his fleet to retreat, but discovered his ships would not respond properly. The gravity mines were already affecting their engines, making faster-than-light travel impossible. The aliens were trapped in a solar system they had thought they could conquer in a few hours. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that had spent centuries preparing for this exact moment. The alien fleet had been designed to fight other fleets in open space, where big ships with heavy armor and powerful shields had advantages, but humans had changed the rules of the game. They had turned their entire star system into a battlefield where every advantage belonged to the defenders. The aliens were fighting not just human ships, but human space itself. Captain Haya Jin stood beside Admiral Wu Jin on the bridge of his flagship, no longer a prisoner but a witness to humanity's greatest victory. "We tried to warn you," she said in her calm, quiet voice. "We told the galaxy to leave us alone. We explained what would happen if you forced our hand. But you thought we were just another primitive species waiting to be conquered." The alien admiral stared at the tactical displays, showing his fleet surrounded by hidden human installations. His 10,000 ships suddenly seemed small and helpless against defenses that covered an entire solar system. "How was this possible?" he whispered. "How could one primitive world build all this?" Captain Hyojin smiled that same small smile that had made his crew nervous. "Because we are not one world, Admiral, we are one species. Every human settlement, every mining station, every research outpost has been part of this plan. We do not fight as individual planets. We fight as humanity itself." The truth was starting to sink in for the alien commanders. They had not come to conquer a single world. They had invaded the territory of a species that treated their entire star system as one giant fortress. Every human colony worked together, sharing resources and information, coordinating their defenses like a single living organism. The aliens had always fought as separate fleets from different worlds with different goals and different leaders, but humans fought as one mind with one purpose. Every weapon system in the solar system was connected to every other system. Every human soldier knew exactly what every other soldier was doing. The 10th Armada was facing not 10,000 individual human ships, but one enormous human war machine engineer. So, Young activated the first wave of gravity mines and watched as sections of the alien fleet suddenly found themselves unable to move. Ships that had been flying in perfect formation were now trapped in invisible cages of twisted space-time. There, engines screamed as they tried to break free, but the artificial gravity held them like insects in amber. The alien crews began to panic as they realized their mighty warships had become sitting targets. They tried to fire their weapons, but discovered that the gravity fields were bending their shots, making accurate targeting impossible. Energy beams that should have traveled in straight lines curved away from their intended targets. Missiles launched normally began flying in circles, unable to lock onto human positions. Commander Minho gave the order to reveal Defense Platform 7 and watched as his asteroid base dropped its camouflage. The rocky exterior fell away like a shell, revealing the massive weapons underneath similar platforms. Throughout the solar system began showing themselves. Each one was bigger than the largest ship in the alien fleet and armed with technology the invaders had never seen before. The aliens finally understood the scope of their mistake. They had come to fight a primitive world with primitive weapons. Instead, they found themselves trapped in the most sophisticated defensive network ever created, facing an enemy that had been planning this battle since before most of their species had achieved. Spaceflight, the small blue world they had dismissed as harmless, had revealed itself to be the most dangerous predator in the galaxy, and the hunt was just beginning. The battle began not with explosions and bright lights, but with silence. Across the alien fleet, ship after ship simply stopped working. Their engines died, their weapons powered down, and their life support systems began failing. The humans had done something impossible. They had turned off the most advanced technology in the galaxy. With what looked like magic, technical specialist Da-Un monitored the cyber warfare from her station deep inside Earth's moon. The lunar surface looked normal from space, with its gray craters and ancient rocks. But underneath lay humanity's greatest secret, a quantum computer network that reached across the entire solar system. While aliens had focused on building bigger guns and stronger shields, humans had quietly become masters of information warfare. Every alien ship contained computer systems to run everything from engines to weapons to life support. Every computer system could be hacked if you were smart enough and patient enough. Humanity had spent decades studying captured alien technology, learning how it worked, finding its weak spots. Now, those years of preparation paid off as human computer viruses spread through the 10th Armada like a plague, turning the aliens' own ships against them. The virus was not just a simple program. It was a living piece of software that could think and adapt and learn. It moved through alien networks faster than their security systems could respond, copying itself into every computer it found. Each copy was slightly different, making it impossible to create a single defense against the attack. Sergeant Kyung-ho laughed as he watched alien fighter craft crash into each other, their navigation systems compromised by human malware. The proud Vex had built their ships to move like insect swarms with thousands of small craft working together. But now that swarm danced to humanity's commands. Hundreds of alien fighters turned their weapons on their own motherships, following new programming that overrode their original instructions. The Vex pilots tried desperately to regain control of their ships, but the human virus had taken over everything. Their controls responded to commands they did not give. Their weapons fired at targets they did not choose. Their ships flew in directions they did not want to go. The insectoid creatures could only watch helplessly as their own technology betrayed them. The Sarkon dreadnoughts tried to fight back by shutting down their computer networks and controlling their ships manually. But humans had prepared for that possibility too. From hidden positions throughout the asteroid belt, railgun platforms opened fire. These weapons used no exotic alien technology, just simple physics pushed to its absolute limit. Captain Boram commanded Railgun Platform 12, watching her tactical display as the massive weapon prepared to fire. The railgun was essentially a giant magnetic tube that could accelerate metal projectiles to incredible speeds. Her ammunition was simple chunks of iron and steel, but when fired at significant fractions of light speed, each piece became a weapon of mass destruction. The railgun fired with no flash or sound in the vacuum of space, but its effect was devastating. The metal slug hit a Sarkon dreadnought with the force of a nuclear weapon. The alien shields that had been thought impenetrable simply vanished as the projectile punched completely through them. The mighty warship cracked in half-spilling atmosphere and crew into the cold emptiness. The aliens had built their defenses to stop energy weapons and exotic matter attacks, but they had forgotten about simple kinetic force. Human projectiles hit with pure momentum that could not be deflected or absorbed. The harder the alien armor, the more spectacular the destruction when unstoppable force met immovable object. On Jupiter's moons, human engineers had turned the gas giant's magnetic field into the largest electromagnetic pulse generator ever built. When it fired, entire sections of the alien fleet went dark, their electronics fried by radiation levels that would have killed unprotected humans instantly. But humans were not unprotected. They had spent generations learning to survive in the harsh environment of space. The electromagnetic pulse weapon was beautiful and terrible to watch. Streams of charged particles flowed along invisible magnetic field lines, creating aurora displays that lit up half the solar system. But for the alien fleet, caught in the radiation storm, it meant death. Their advanced electronics could not handle the massive energy surge systems that had worked perfectly for centuries, simply melted. The lumens beings of pure energy tried to escape the chaos by phasing out of normal space into the dimension where they naturally lived. But they discovered too late that humans had been studying dimensional physics as well. Hidden generators throughout the solar system created interference patterns that locked the fabric of space itself, trapping the energy beings in solid reality where human weapons could reach them. Dr. Sunwoo watched from his research station as the dimensional anchors activated. The lumens had always considered themselves superior to physical beings able to exist in multiple dimensions at once, but human science had found a way to trap them in just 3 dimensions, making them vulnerable for the first time in their species' history. The energy beings found themselves suddenly solid and fragile, unable to phase through matter or bend reality to their will. They were trapped in bodies of concentrated light that could be hurt and killed like any other creature. Their panic was visible as bright flashes of color that rippled across their forms. Admiral Wu Jin watched his mighty armada crumble around him, destroyed not by superior firepower, but by superior thinking. The humans fought like no species he had ever encountered. They used their enemies' strengths against them, turned advantages into weaknesses, and made the impossible seem routine. Every alien tactic was countered before it could be deployed, every weapon neutralized before it could fire. The alien admiral had studied warfare for 3 centuries. He had conquered dozens of worlds and defeated hundreds of fleets, but he had never faced an enemy like this. The humans did not just fight with their ships and weapons, they fought with their minds. They had turned the entire battle into a chess game where they controlled every piece. His tactical officer, a creature with multiple brains designed for complex calculations, tried desperately to find a weakness in the human defenses, but every attack was anticipated, every strategy countered. Every move the aliens made seemed to play directly into human hands, as if the battle had been choreographed in advance. The humans had not just prepared weapons and defenses, they had prepared for every possible alien tactic. They knew how each species fought, what strategies they would use, what weaknesses they would try to exploit. The entire solar system was a trap, designed specifically for the 10th Armada, with every detail planned decades in advance. Captain Hyojin walked to the main view screen and watched as another alien battleship succumbed to human cyber attacks. You wanted to see primitive humans in action, Admiral. Now you know what we are really capable of. We are not just warriors, we are hunters. And you flew straight into our web. The 10th Armada had come to conquer humanity. Instead, they were being systematically dismantled by creatures they had dismissed as primitives. The hunters had become the hunted, and there was no escape from the trap they had flown into. As the alien fleet continued to fall apart, the true scope of humanity's preparation became clear to everyone watching. This was not just a battle, it was a demonstration. Every shot fired, every system hacked, every trap sprung, had been calculated. To send a message to the entire galaxy, humanity was not to be underestimated, ever again. Fleet Commander Young-Soo coordinated the human response from a command center built into an ordinary-looking asteroid. Around him, dozens of operators managed the most complex military operation in galactic history. Every human installation was connected, every weapon system synchronized, every defensive measure perfectly timed. The aliens were fighting not just Earth, but the entire human species working as one mind. The command center was a marvel of human engineering carved from solid rock and filled with technology that made alien systems look primitive. Holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the solar system, while quantum computers calculated the optimal response to each alien move. The humans were fighting a 3-dimensional chess game, and they had been planning their moves for decades. The Sarkhan Admiral Kralix tried desperately to rally his remaining forces, ordering his ships to ram human positions if they could not fight with conventional weapons. But even this final desperate tactic was useless. Human point defense systems hidden throughout the solar system intercepted the kamikaze attacks with ease. Walls of superheated plasma erupted from concealed weapon platforms, vaporizing incoming ships before they could reach their targets. Clouds of micro-missiles swarmed around alien vessels like angry metal insects, each one guided by artificial intelligence that could think faster than any biological brain. The Sarkhan warriors found their honor-bound suicide runs ending in meaningless death. The aliens began to realize something that chilled them to their cores. Every human installation had been designed, not just to fight, but to win. Every weapon system had backup systems, and those backup systems had backup systems. The humans had planned for every possible failure, every conceivable disaster. On Titan, Saturn's largest moon weapons specialist, Yunji activated the most devastating surprise in the human arsenal. What appeared to be a normal ice-covered moon was actually a massive mass driver capable of launching Saturn's rings as weapons. The rings were made of billions of ice particles and rock. Fragments each piece accelerated to incredible speeds. The weapon fired in silence, but its effect was like a shotgun blast that could shred entire fleets. Billions of high-speed projectiles spread out in a cone of destruction that covered thousands of cubic kilometers of space. Any ship caught in that cone simply ceased to exist, torn apart by impacts too numerous to count. The aliens watched in horror as one of the most beautiful sights in the solar system became an instrument of destruction. The rings of Saturn had been admired by every species that visited the system. Now they learned that humans had weaponized even natural wonders, turning beauty into a tool of war. The Vex Queen, a massive creature the size of a building, tried to use her species' telepathic abilities to coordinate a final assault. She had commanded millions of drones across dozens of battles, her mental voice reaching every Vex ship in the fleet. But when she sent out her orders, she found her commands blocked by something impossible, Doctor. Sun Wu and his team of human psionics researchers had been studying alien mental powers for decades. They had learned to read telepathic signals to understand how they worked, and most importantly, how to jam them. The Vex Queen found her mental voice shouting into empty space with no one able to hear her commands. The human psionic jamming system was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of blocking telepathic signals, it flooded the mental spectrum with noise like static on a radio, random. Thoughts and emotions broadcasted at maximum power created a wall of mental chaos that made communication impossible. The Vex drones flew in confused circles, unable to hear their queen's voice. In desperation, the remaining alien commanders decided to target Earth itself, hoping to force humanity's surrender by threatening their homeworld. They launched every missile they had left and aimed every working weapon at the small blue planet that had defied them for so long. They discovered that Earth was the most heavily defended world in galactic history. The blue planet was surrounded by defense grids that made attacking it nearly impossible. Layer after layer of shields and weapons protected humanity's birth world. Each layer was stronger than the last, and behind them all waited defenses that the aliens could not even imagine. More importantly, humanity had learned the hardest lesson of survival. They had spread across their entire solar system, making it impossible to defeat them by conquering any single world. Every moon base, every asteroid mining station, every research outpost was prepared to continue the fight. Even if Earth itself fell space, Marine Captain Jin Wu led his boarding teams against the few alien ships that remained functional. Human soldiers moved through alien corridors like ghosts in the night, their equipment perfectly adapted for void warfare. While aliens needed bulky environmental suits to survive in space, humans had evolved to live there. The boarding parties were humanity at its most dangerous. Small teams of soldiers who could think independently and adapt to any situation. They moved through alien ships with silent efficiency, disabling key systems, rescuing prisoners, and gathering intelligence. Each Marine was worth a dozen alien soldiers in close combat. Captain Jin Wu watched his tactical display as another alien ship went dark. His teams having successfully captured the bridge, the aliens fought bravely, but they were not prepared for enemies who could survive in vacuum and fight in zero gravity. The humans had every advantage in ship-to-ship combat. The aliens began to understand something that filled them with terror. Humanity was not just winning this battle, they were enjoying it. Every human transmission carried undertones of satisfaction, as if this massive conflict was exactly what they had been hoping for. The species the galaxy had dismissed as barbaric primitives were revealing themselves to be the most dangerous predators anyone had ever encountered. The humans fought with a joy that was terrifying to witness. They had been preparing for this battle for generations, and now that it was finally here, they were making the most of it. Every successful attack, every clever Every moment of alien confusion brought smiles to human faces. Fleet Commander Young Su allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as he watched the tactical display. The 10th Armada was finished as a fighting force. Less than 1,000 ships remained functional, and those were trapped by gravity mines with nowhere to run. The most powerful military force in galactic history had been defeated by a species they had thought primitive. But the victory was not just military, it was psychological. The entire galaxy would learn what happened when they challenged the small blue world that refused to bow to anyone. Every species would hear the story of how 10,000 ships had been destroyed by human cleverness and human determination. Admiral Wu Jin realized the terrible truth as his flagship lost power and began drifting helplessly through space. The 10th Armada had not come to conquer humanity. They had come to be conquered by it. Every ship in his fleet, every crew member, every weapon system was about to become a prize of war for the species they had tried to enslave. The cost of galactic arrogance was about to be paid in full. The final phase of the battle was not really a battle at all. It was a systematic dismantling of everything. The Galactic Council thought they knew about warfare. The few remaining alien ships found themselves completely unable to fight back. Their weapons turned against each other, their crews trapped inside their own vessels by human cyber attacks that controlled everything. Communications Officer Hei Wan sat at her console deep within the Lunar Command Center and prepared to broadcast humanity's message across all frequencies. She wanted to make sure that every species in the galaxy would hear Earth's words clearly. The message was simple and devastating, but it would change the course of galactic history forever. This is Earth speaking to all species in the galaxy. She began, her voice calm and steady. We offered you friendship and trade. You chose to send an armada to destroy us. We warned you what would happen if you forced peaceful people to defend themselves. Now you have seen the result. Learn from this mistake, because we will not be so merciful next time. The transmission went out on every communication channel known to galactic civilization, emergency frequencies, diplomatic channels, even entertainment broadcasts carried the human message. Every world, every ship, every space station in the galaxy heard the words that would be remembered for centuries to come. The galaxy had always believed that mercy was weakness, that showing kindness to enemies was the mark of inferior species. They were about to learn that mercy was actually a choice made by those strong enough to destroy their enemies completely, but wise enough to prefer peace. Humanity had just demonstrated both their incredible power and their remarkable restraint in the most spectacular way possible. Security Chief Jae-hoon supervised the capture of surviving alien personnel from the destroyed ships. Instead of execution or torture, the prisoners were treated with respect, given medical care, and shown recordings of the battle from multiple angles. The humans wanted every survivor to understand exactly what had happened and why. The alien prisoners could barely believe what they were seeing. Human medics worked tirelessly to save the lives of enemy soldiers who had just tried to kill them. Human engineers repaired alien life support systems to keep prisoners alive. Human cooks prepared food that alien species could safely eat. The mercy shown by humanity was more shocking than their military victory. Each prisoner was given access to complete battle recordings, showing how the human trap had been set and sprung. They watched in amazement as the true scope of human preparation was revealed. Every defensive position, every weapon system, every tactical decision had been planned decades in advance with mathematical precision. These aliens would eventually return home as living proof of humanity's capabilities. They would tell their species about the solar system that had become a fortress, about the primitive world that had outsmarted the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Their testimony would be more valuable than any weapon in convincing other species to leave humanity alone. The Lumen's energy beings who had considered themselves superior to all physical life found themselves contained in specially designed prisons that converted their energy forms into stable matter. For the first time in their species' history, they experienced physical vulnerability and learned what it meant to be truly helpless. Dr. Sun Wu observed the captured lumens with scientific fascination. The energy beings had spent millions of years believing they were above the concerns of lesser species. Now they were trapped in bodies that could feel pain and fear and desperation. The lesson would stay with them forever. The lumens tried to bargain for their release, offering advanced technology and scientific knowledge in exchange for freedom. But the humans were not interested in conquest or plunder. They kept only what they needed to understand their former enemies. Everything else was either returned or destroyed. Engineer Ji-hoon began the process of salvaging alien technology, but not for the reasons the prisoners expected. Instead of keeping the advanced weapons and starships for their own use, humanity methodically destroyed everything that could be used for war. They kept only medical technology, communication equipment, and scientific instruments. The galaxy watched in disbelief as humanity proved they had no interest in conquest or empire. The species that had just defeated the most powerful military force in known space was voluntarily destroying the tools of war. They could have used alien technology to build their own fleet of conquest instead. They chose to remain defenders. Trade routes that had operated for thousands of years suddenly shifted as merchants and diplomats realized they needed to reassess everything they thought they knew about humanity's species that had never heard the name Earth suddenly wanted to open diplomatic relations with the world that had humbled the Galactic Council. Captain Hye-jin was promoted to admiral and given command of humanity's first diplomatic mission to the galaxy. Her ship was not a warship, but a hospital vessel filled with medical supplies and humanitarian aid. The same species that had built the solar system fortress was now offering to heal the wounds of war. But the most important message was not about human military power. It was about human character. Despite having the strength to pursue retreating aliens and conquer their worlds, humanity chose to stay home. Despite having technology that could dominate the galaxy, they used it only for defense. The species everyone had, dismissed as primitive barbarians, had revealed themselves to be the most civilized race in known space. The alien survivors began to understand that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their tactics. It was their willingness to remain moral even when they had every excuse to be otherwise. They fought only when attacked, showed mercy to defeated enemies, and offered friendship to former foes. Admiral Wu Jin, now a prisoner on his own flagship, watched as human technicians carefully repaired the damage to his ship. They worked with skill and precision, showing the same care for alien technology that they showed for their own. When he asked why they were helping their enemies, the human engineer simply smiled. "Because it is the right thing to do," the engineer replied, as if the answer was obvious. "We fought to defend ourselves, not to destroy others. Now that the fighting is over, we help everyone we can. Your crew needs life support and your ship needs repairs, so we provide both." The alien admiral began to understand that he had not just lost a battle, he had encountered a completely different way of thinking about power and responsibility. Humanity possessed the strength to rule the galaxy, but they chose to use that strength to protect and heal instead of conquer and destroy. 6 months later, when the repaired alien ships were allowed to return home, they carried with them more than just survivors. They carried proof that there was a better way to live in the galaxy, a way based on cooperation instead of domination. The small blue world had taught the universe a lesson it would never forget. 6 months after the destruction of the 10th Armada, the galaxy was a completely different place. The Galactic Council, once proud rulers of 1,000 worlds, now found themselves begging for audiences with human diplomats. Species that had demanded Earth's surrender were now competing to offer the most favorable trade agreements and diplomatic treaties. Ambassador Nari stood before the rebuilt Galactic Assembly, representing not a conquered primitive world, but the most respected power in known space. The other delegates hung on her every word, desperate to avoid saying anything that might offend the species that had proven capable of turning an entire star system into a weapon of unimaginable power. The assembly hall had been redesigned to accommodate the new reality. A place of honor was reserved for the human delegation, while representatives from former council species sat in smaller sections. The beings who had once ruled the galaxy now waited nervously for permission to speak. Economic effects of humanity's victory were just as dramatic as the military ones. Human technology, carefully selected and shared, revolutionized everything it touched. Their medical advances saved millions of lives across dozens of worlds. Their communication systems connected distant civilizations like never before. Their agricultural techniques ended famines that had lasted for generations. But most importantly, human philosophy began to spread throughout the galaxy. The idea that might should serve right, not the other way around. The concept that true strength came from protecting the weak rather than conquering them was revolutionary to species that had spent millennia believing in the rule of Force Captain Heejin, now serving as Earth's first galactic ambassador, established humanity's embassy on the former Council homeworld. The building was modest by alien standards, but impressive for its simplicity. Unlike the towering monuments to power that other species built, the human embassy was designed to be welcoming and accessible to all. The embassy became a symbol of the new galactic order. Its doors were always open to anyone seeking help or guidance. Human diplomats worked tirelessly to mediate disputes between species, to negotiate fair trade agreements, and to establish peaceful solutions to conflicts that had raged for centuries. The Sarkon's proud reptilian warriors, who had considered themselves the galaxy's finest soldiers, came to Earth with a humble request. They wanted permission to study human military doctrine, to understand how creatures they had dismissed as primitives had so completely outfought their best warriors. Colonel Tai Jin welcomed the Sarkon delegation to Mars and showed them around the converted planet. The alien warriors were amazed to discover that humanity's greatest advantage was not their weapons, but their ability to think like their enemies, to understand their opponents so completely that victory became inevitable. "We do not fight to prove we are strong," the colonel explained as they toured the Martian defense installations. "We fight to protect what we love. That is why we always win. We have more to fight for than those who attack us." The Sarkons began to understand that true warrior spirit was not about conquest or glory. It was about dedication to something greater than yourself. The human soldiers they met were not driven by pride or ambition, but by love for their families, their homes, and their way of life. Dr. Sun Wu led the first joint scientific expedition between humans and their former enemies, studying the quantum mechanics of faster-than-light travel. The aliens were amazed to discover that humans were willing to share knowledge freely without demanding tribute or submission in return. This generosity accomplished what force never could. It won genuine loyalty and respect. Species across the galaxy began to see humanity not as conquerors to be feared, but as leaders to be followed. The humans had proven they could destroy anyone who threatened them, but chose instead to help anyone who asked. The Vex insectoid creatures, who had always lived in rigid hierarchies with queens commanding mindless drones, began experimenting with human concepts of individual freedom and democratic government. Their society transformed almost overnight as worker drones learned they could make their own choices, and queens discovered that ruling through consent was more effective than ruling through control even. The ancient lumens energy beings, who had considered themselves above the concerns of physical creatures, found themselves fascinated by human culture. They began taking solid forms to experience art and music and literature concepts they had never understood before encountering humanity. The beings of pure energy had spent millions of years thinking they were superior to all other life forms. Now they learned that physical existence offered experiences and emotions they had never imagined. The humans taught them that there was beauty in having a body that could touch and taste and feel. Trade routes that had once avoided the Sol system now made it their primary destination. Human goods were prized not for their advanced technology, but for their reliability and craftsmanship. Human art became fashionable across the galaxy, celebrated for its diversity and emotional depth. But perhaps the most significant change was philosophical. The galaxy had always operated on the principle that might made right that the strong naturally ruled the weak, and that conquest was the highest achievement any species could aspire to. Humanity offered a completely different model. They demonstrated that true strength existed to protect the weak, that real power came from the consent of the governed, and that the highest achievement of any civilization was not conquest, but cooperation. The idea spread from world to world, changing how entire species thought about government and society. Ambassador Nara concluded her address to the Galactic Assembly with words that would be remembered for generations. "We never wanted to rule you. We just wanted to be left in peace to develop our civilization and explore the universe. But since you forced us to demonstrate our strength, we will use that power to build something better than what came before." She gestured to the assembled delegates, representing hundreds of species that had once been enemies. Not an empire built on conquest and fear, but a community of equals working together for the benefit of all a galaxy, where disputes are settled through negotiation rather than warfare, where knowledge is shared freely, and where every species has the right to determine its own destiny. 10th Armada's defeat became a story told on every world in the galaxy, a reminder that arrogance and aggression would be met with overwhelming force. But equally important was the story of what came after, how the victorious humans had chosen mercy over revenge, partnership, over dominance and peace, over perpetual war. The galaxy had learned its lesson the hard way. Earth's ultimatum had been clear, and the 10th Armada had paid the ultimate price for ignoring it. But from that payment came something unprecedented in galactic history, a lasting peace built not on fear, but on mutual respect and shared prosperity. Humanity had saved the galaxy by conquering it and then choosing to set it free. The small blue world that had refused to bow to anyone had taught the universe that true strength was measured not by who you could defeat, but by who you could protect, and in protecting everyone they had won the greatest victory of all. Admiral Wu Jin stood tall on the command bridge of the massive alien warship called Starbreaker. The ship was bigger than most cities and had enough weapons to destroy entire worlds. He looked through the huge window at the small blue planet far away in space. That tiny dot was Earth, and today, it would finally learn to obey the Galactic Council. The alien fleet around him was the most powerful force ever gathered. 10,000 ships from dozens of different species, all working together to teach humanity a lesson. The reptile people called Sarkons brought their deadly plasma cannons that could melt through any armor. The bug creatures known as Vex had millions of small fighter ships that moved like angry wasps. The energy beings called Lumens could bend reality itself with their strange powers. This was the 10th Armada, and every species in the galaxy feared its name. When the 10th Armada came to your world, you had two choices: submit or die. Most worlds chose to submit, Admiral. Wu Jin smiled as he remembered all the planets that had surrendered without a fight. The proud warriors of Kelax had lasted 3 hours before begging for mercy. The crystal cities of Vorthak had given up the moment they saw his ships appear in their sky. Even the machine worlds of the Synthetic Alliance had calculated their chances and decided resistance was impossible. But humans were different. Humans were stupid. For 50 years, the Galactic Council had sent messages to Earth. The messages were always the same. Give up your weapons. Join the Council as a servant species. Accept that you are too primitive to govern yourselves. Stop building those ugly metal ships and let your betters take care of you. Every time the humans sent back the same answer. No, it was not even a polite no. It was just a single word transmitted across space with no explanation. No treaties, no negotiations, no fear. Just that one word that made Admiral Wu Jin angry every time he thought about it. The other alien. Commanders had laughed when they heard about Earth. Most of them had never seen a human ship. The few who had described them as flying junk heaps made of metal and chemical rockets, primitive garbage that moved slowly through space and could barely reach their own moon. How could creatures who still used fire to push their ships around space possibly threaten an empire that controlled faster than light travel? It was like a caveman challenging a star destroyer, but Admiral Wu Jin was more. Careful than the others, he had studied human history, and what he found there worried him. Humans were the only species that had never been conquered. Not by other humans and not by nature, they fought everything including themselves and somehow always survived. They took the worst planets in their system and made them into homes. They turned their moon into a military base and their asteroid belt into a mining operation. Still, they were just one small world with primitive technology. What could they possibly do against the might of 10,000 advanced warships? Captain Hyejin stood quietly in the corner of the bridge, watching everything with calm, dark eyes. She was the only human on the ship captured 3 months ago during a border fight near Jupiter. The aliens had expected her to be afraid or angry or begging for her life. Instead, she just watched and waited like she was studying for a test. She was small, even for a human, but there was something about her that made the alien crew nervous. When they pushed her, she did not push back. She just looked at them with those steady eyes and smiled a little smile that never reached her face, the smile that said she knew something they did not. Admiral Wu Jin had tried many times to get information from her about Earth defenses. She always gave the same answer. "You should have listened to our warnings. We told you what would happen if you brought a large fleet to our system. We tried to save you from making this mistake." The warnings she spoke of were strange messages Earth had sent to the Galactic Council over the past 10 years. They were not threats exactly, more like friendly advice. The messages said things like, "We recommend that military fleets avoid our solar system. Large groups of warships near Earth might trigger automatic defensive responses. We cannot guarantee the safety of hostile forces that enter our space." The Council had laughed at these messages. Automatic defensive responses from a world that barely had spaceflight. It was like an ant warning an elephant to stay away from its hill. Ridiculous. But now, as the 10th Armada moved closer to Earth, something strange was happening. Their long-range sensors were picking up energy, readings that made no sense. The readings showed massive power sources throughout the solar system, but there was nothing there. Just empty space. Admiral Wu Jin frowned at the displays. Energy signatures bigger than anything he had ever seen were appearing and disappearing all around Earth. Where were they coming from? The humans had maybe 100 small ships total, and most of those were mining vessels or cargo haulers. Nothing that could generate this much power. His sensor officer was a tall, thin creature with 6 arms and compound eyes. He had been scanning space for 200 years and had never seen anything like this. "Commander, the readings are impossible. Our sensors show energy sources the size of moons, but visual scans show nothing." Could the humans have learned to hide their ships? That was impossible. Human technology was at least 1,000 years behind galactic standard. They still used metal hulls and chemical fuel. Their computers were so primitive they could barely calculate jump coordinates. Captain Hyejin walked slowly to the main view screen and stared out at her home world. Her smile grew a little wider. "You still do not understand, do you?" she said in her quiet voice. "We never needed to hide anything from you. We have been showing you exactly what we are for 50 years. You just refuse to see it." "What are you talking about?" Admiral Wu Jin demanded. "What could you possibly have that threatens this fleet, Captain?" Hyejin turned to face him, and for the first time since her capture, she looked truly happy. We have something no other species in the galaxy has ever developed. Time. We have had 200 years to prepare for this day. 200 years to study your technology. 200 years to plan for the moment when you would finally decide we were too dangerous to leave alone. The Admiral felt a chill run through his scaled skin. 200 years. But humans had only achieved spaceflight 50 years ago. They had only left their own system 30 years ago. How could they have been preparing for 2 centuries? Because we knew you would come, she continued. We studied every species you conquered. We watched how you fought your wars. We learned your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses. We knew that eventually you would decide that a free human world was too dangerous to allow. We spent 2 centuries getting ready for that day. The ship sensors began screaming warnings. Energy readings were spiking all around them. Space itself seemed to be lighting up like a star, but there was still nothing visible. Nothing. Their eyes could see. Captain Hai-Jin pressed her face against the view screen and whispered something in her own language. Then she looked back at the alien crew with eyes that held no mercy at all. Welcome to our solar system, Admiral. You wanted to see what humans are capable of when we stop being nice. Now you are going to find out. Suddenly, space around Earth began to change. The empty void started to shimmer and bend like heat waves rising from hot ground. Then slowly, piece by piece, things began to appear. Things that had been there all along, waiting for the right moment to show themselves. Battle stations the size of asteroids materialized, out of nothing. Defense platforms that dwarfed the largest ships in the alien fleet became visible, floating in perfect formation. Weapon systems that defied known physics, powered up with energy readings that made the fleet sensors go crazy. The humans had not been building ships. They had been building the most elaborate trap in galactic history. The entire solar system was a weapon pointed directly at the heart of the 10th Armada Admiral. Wu Jin stared in growing horror as more and more human installations revealed themselves. His mighty fleet had flown straight into the jaws of a beast they never saw coming. They were not the hunters. They were the prey. The small blue world had been waiting for them all along.